So pretty much all of us have used an AI chatbot by now, right? But what's the next step? I mean, how does an AI go from just answering our questions to actually doing things for us? Today, we're going to break down that evolution from a simple tool into what's becoming a true collaborator. Okay, let's get into it.
Here's the big question we're really digging into. How do we bridge that gap between an AI that just talks and an AI that actually acts? What's the secret sauce that transforms a passive chatbot into an active system that can go out and get things done in the real world? To figure that out, we have to start with what's familiar to everybody. So level 1 is all about the foundational tech that you're probably using every single day.
At the core of tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, you've got a large language model, or an LLM. You can think of it as this incredibly advanced engine for text. You give it some input, a prompt, and based on the ridiculous amount of data it was trained on, it spits out an output. It can generate an email that sounds way more polite than I ever could, for example.
But right out of the box, these LLMs have two major limitations. First, they're totally passive. They just sit there and wait for you to ask them to do something. And second, their knowledge is walled off. Like, if I ask ChatGPT when my next coffee meeting is, it has absolutely no clue. Why? Well, it can't get into my personal calendar. It's completely separate from my private data. Now, keep those two things in mind as we move up to the next level. So how do we get around those limits? How do we break down that wall? Well, that brings us right to level 2, automated workflows. This is where we start connecting these powerful LLMs to the rest of the world.
An AI workflow is essentially a recipe. It's a recipe that we, the humans, create for the AI to follow. We define a very specific step-by-step path that links together a bunch of different tools and services to get a particular job done. The key here is that the human is the one who draws the map.
Let's make this feel a bit more real. Imagine you want to automate your social media. You could set up a workflow that, number 1, pulls news links from a Google Sheet. Then, number 2, it sends those links over to an AI like Perplexity to summarize them. Step 3, it takes those summaries and feeds them to another AI like Claude to actually draft the posts. And finally, step 4, it schedules them to go live. See, it's like a digital assembly line that we've designed. And here is the most crucial point about workflows. The AI has zero decision-making power. It's just following orders. If I run that social media workflow and I look at the post it created and think, that's not very funny, the AI can't fix it by itself. I, the human, have to go back in and manually tweak the prompts or change the steps. The AI is just doing exactly what I told it to do. Okay, and this is where things get really, really cool. Let's jump to level 3, because this is where we see a huge leap to something way more powerful, the autonomous agent. This is the difference between just following a recipe and actually thinking like a chef. Here it is. This is the single biggest aha moment when we go from a workflow to an agent. The role of decision maker completely flips. Instead of me, the human, setting every single step, the large language model itself basically becomes the project manager. It doesn't just follow a path, it chooses the path.
So, if we want to get formal about it, an AI agent is a system where you can give it a really high-level goal. Something like, hey, create and post engaging social media content based on today's top tech news. The agent then has to figure out on its own how to actually do that. It makes its own decisions, it picks its own tools, and it takes action, all without needing a step-by-step script from us.
Now, how in the world does it do that? Well, one of the most common ways is through a framework called React. The re part stands for reason. This is the thinking phase. The agent looks at the goal and it strategizes. It might think to itself, okay, to get the news, I could scrape a website or I could use a news API. The API is probably cleaner and more reliable. Let's plan on using that.
And the second part of that framework is act. Simple enough, right? Once the agent has its plan, it actually takes action. It uses the tools it has available. It calls that news API, it connects to a different tool for summarization, and it interfaces with Twitter or LinkedIn to actually get the content posted. It's actively doing things to make progress.
And here is another absolute game changer. Remember that social media post that wasn't funny enough? With a workflow, I had to fix it myself. An AI agent can actually handle that on its own. It can critique its own work, maybe it even uses a second LLM as a critic, and decide, you know what, this first draft isn't good enough. I'm going to try again. But this time, I'll use a more humorous tone. It can go through that loop over and over until it gets it right.
So with these incredibly powerful agents starting to come online, the obvious question is, well, where do we fit into all this? Our job really starts to shift from being a micromanager to being more of a director.
All right, let's recap the whole journey real quick. We started with basic LLMs that just respond to us. Then, we leveled up to workflows, which follow our explicit orders. And now, we're at agents, which can make their own decisions to hit a goal. The big picture here is that AI is moving from being just a bunch of separate tools into these fully operational systems. And that makes our role more critical than ever, because we're the ones who have to set the goals, define the rules of the road, and provide that absolutely essential human oversight.
And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question to think about. As these AI agents get better and better at doing the operational stuff, the day-to-day execution, what becomes the most valuable and uniquely human work that's left for us? It kind of suggests that our focus is going to shift way more towards strategy, real creativity, and maybe most importantly, asking the right questions in the first place.